Hey, this is Patter from the Cosmic Tower Project, and scalar technology is amazing. The EE system that's been around for a couple decades, amazing. The Cosmic Tower Project, amazing. Anything that we can do to create harmony in this world is all good. And I have somebody here with me today. His name is John Head, and John has a real depth of experience with the EE systems, and then he's shifted his focus to be more involved with the Cosmic Tower while still staying with the EE system. So I thought he'd be a great person to talk about the differences between the two and what cautions there are as the E system business model is maturing. We're getting some feedback from the marketplace that people aren't being as supported as they were in the past, and things are changing a little bit. So we thought we'd go into that and make this contribution to the community. So to start off, John, tell us about the great parts of the EE system, because I understand you run a business with EE system remote and that you're still involved with that and you're making that available to people. Tell us what that is.
Well, there's a lot of different people that use remote services. Rife Technologies use remote. A lot of people do remote healing. There's a lot of other tools that support that. Dr. Tiller, storing intent and using it to manifest to support children with autism, was a very well documented medical project. And I've always felt that when the EE system does require to be up 24/7, 365, you can't turn it off. You have to recalibrate it every time it goes off. And I was saying, well, you've got all this time that you're not using to benefit people because you don't want to run your office 24/7, 365. Why don't we look at doing overnights and doing remotes with one of the facilities I was working with originally? And they started doing overnights, and that really did support their business. A lot of people had some amazing effects, and I did some overnights and had very good spiritual experiences with it. What I found with remote is that it gets out of the way of the mind, sometimes blocking what can happen in the way of a healing or a spiritual result. So when the left brain sort of gets out of the way, the fences drop and there is more movement. And that's why I like remote, because it's on as much as you want it. And that's why I like remote, because when I do healing work remote, I try to do it at night when they're asleep so I can get past the learned mind and its roadblocks.
Yeah, our minds are pretty good at blocking, especially that which is good for us. We just
Oh,
stay in
yeah,
our habits, don't we? We think our way into trouble.
we do daily sometimes.
Yeah, so you're still using the E system to reach people remotely, and what kind of benefits are you seeing in people's lives from doing that?
Well, I have a quote from a lady whose son had a genetic defect, where his body cannot process toxicity out. And so every 3 or 4 days, he has to go through this process to detoxify his body. And they couldn't travel because they have to go to a doctor to facilitate it. But after a few sessions of EE System Live, as I'll call it, and then a continued multi-month exposure to EE Remote, they invited me up to visit with the family, and they were in tears. Said, "Look, we've got our son back. He's no longer antagonistic because he's now clear. The toxins are not building up. It's assisting the detoxing process." So we actually went on a vacation for 10 days, which is the first time we've ever been able to do that with our son. And he didn't have any adverse effects till the 10 days were over and we were coming back, and it finally caught up with us. But he said going from 2 days to 10 days, that's magical because it changed his personality, things of that nature. And then when you combine biogeometry with remote, and you can do a lot more. An example of that, I have a friend whose husband's in a general contractor, and he works really hard sometimes if he's short on staff. And he says, I put 2 tons of waste remodeling a home in a storage bin today, trying to get this thing done. He says, normally I come home and I'm asleep in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, because I'm just so exhausted. This time I wasn't exhausted. And that was due to the remote and combining it with the biogeometry. I'll use the word technology. So there's a lot that can be done with it, for sure.
Yeah, so you're layering in even more of your life expertise with doing the remote, and that's really great. And My understanding is that there was a while here where EE systems were pretty new, and I understand they're really pretty expensive. Do you know what the price range is from the least expensive to the most expensive EE system?
I think the 4 cube, which a lot of people get for their home, is roughly, and I hate to give a number, but I think it's in the 20s or anywhere from 15 to 20 something.
Yeah,
I know that the 24 towers are roughly 125,000, I think.
yeah,
They
yeah.
require a deposit up front, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's consistent with what I've heard in the marketplace. Something in the 20s of thousands and then up to 125,000. And I think when the systems were originally being put out, there was a lot of space between them and they were new. And so people were driving 4, 5, 600, 700 miles to
Yeah,
get to an E system and have a bunch of treatments because they invested so much to get there. And now they're kind of popping up, and
everywhere.
it's and it seems like with that huge initial investment, people expect if they're making that not just to have healing for themselves, but to have a business with it. And I've heard from some business owners who, um, there's some of the ones that made it to installed and they got the whole thing and they started building their business, and the clientele hasn't been there for them. Can you speak to that at all?
Well, I think there is developing an oversaturation. There are a lot of people who are doing the work they see the economic opportunity of an EE system as a business. And business owners are business owners. They're trying to make money. And so they're very structured in their approach and all that. What I've discovered is that EE system is being run as a business, not as a gift to society. And that's due to some of the ownership allowing younger people to run the business where are more business acclimated and they're working to make it a good business. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think stuff that really changes people's lives should be dealt with on a more harmonious layer,
Mhm.
and trying to find a way to make everybody be successful, because they're seeing their success in sales of units, not success in sales of centers. And
Mhm.
that's a very different dynamic.
Yeah, for sure. And so when you speak of that harmony, one of the things that you've done recently is join the Cosmic Tower Project on a kind of an official capacity, which is that anybody that's talking about EES systems and Cosmic Towers, they all get to contact you and talk with you about it. So
Yeah.
help them understand a little bit about the harmony of the Cosmic Tower Project, why you chose to affiliate with the Cosmic Tower Project.
Well, I think we get into the fact that trying to make a difference in the world can be different than trying to build a business that supports people.
Mm.
And this group that you lead is all about making a difference. And it's not about the total dollars obtained from a deal. It's about getting something out there fairly at a reasonable price point based on cost, versus this one. I used to be in the computer manufacturing business. I know what these things cost to build. You can build a Blade computer for $400, and the racks are $800. So you go 8 times 4, and then we'll just say 1,000 times 4 for the setup, and then you've got 24 systems at roughly, we'll just say 500. That's $12,000. Yet they're selling for 125.
Yeah.
So there's a big delta there, and a lot of people are making money. There's lots of pieces in it. The installers get paid. They get paid. There's lots of upfront costs with your configuration of your space, and those costs are not necessarily expressed by the salespeople. They don't know that they have to have conditioned electricity to support the EE system. It has to be on its own circuit. Can't be dirty electricity. So you have to buy cleaners for electricity. Sometimes those can be expensive if you're not in the right location.
Wow. So there's additional costs, not just the cost of the equipment. That's part of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I appreciate that you feel that that desire that the Cosmic Tower project has to make a difference. You know, one of the early parts of my life is that I made a ton of money, and
Yeah.
then and then it went away, right? And when it
Same
went
here.
away, right? Yeah, I mean, it happened to a lot of us around 2000. We made a lot of money, and you know, other people, different decades and whatnot. But there are a lot of us around then,
Yeah.
and then when it went away, I learned that it didn't make me happy. In fact, I was really fearful and protective, and yeah, I didn't like very much who I was. So I've approached business differently, which is that I want great relationships and I want to make a difference in people's lives. And if I can do that while having enough money in the form of energy to move things forward and just keep growing and touching more people, then that's enough. You know, that's enough. So I'm glad that you feel that. And are there any
Oh,
other aspects of the harmony of the Cosmic Tower project that you're aware of right now?
well, I have been using other tools with Cosmic Tower, the biogeometry and some other putting crystals, and I've provided a lot of different people exposure to the towers and that don't necessarily go, I've been looking at the tower. Now they go, whoa, what is this? So there's a side of people who are unaware of the value of a tower compared to the value of a scalar wand. Because there's more technology. All right, so here's what I like. All right.
Hmm.
Technology for the sake of technology can get in the way. I work with Rife equipment and I use plasma tubes to help me heal my body from 5 years of hypoxia, where I essentially was brain dead. And since then, I have recovered completely. And actually, I think even better at this point because I'm more spiritually connected than thought oriented. And it's really changed my life in a lot of ways. I found out that I could actually do too much electronic ingestion into my body. And so I have a number of friends that are spiritually oriented and psychic, whatever you want to frame it. And I was going, I just feel weird. I've been doing this thing every night, running this plasma tube on me, healing myself. I'm feeling great physically, but I'm just buzzy. I'm just buzzy. I feel like, little bitty water fleas crawling all over me or something. And she goes, let me check. She goes, oh, you've overamped yourself. But what do you mean? Too much electronic energy coming to you, regardless of how harmonious it is not the natural state of the human form. We have to adapt to that. And she goes, stop using your plasma at night. And I did. And I started feeling better. I've since sold all my plasma equipment to others that need that resonance. And I mean, everything has its own resonance for the right person. We're not saying that one shouldn't get EE system if they're called to do it. And can they help a lot of people? Yes. But there are some factors that one should consider because they do project EMF. And if you go into an EE systems and sit in it, and then you bring an EMF blocking fabric and put it on you halfway through your session, you will feel different. It's a different energy. People sort of like the feel. They're going, man, I can feel it. Well, yeah, you can feel EMF. Go stand in front of a microwave tower, you'll feel it. Go stand under a high power line, you'll feel it. Doesn't mean that it's good for you. So what I liked about the towers was it's just sort of this Zen line. It's just, but it's up above you. And so it pulls you up. One thing my martial arts instructors taught me, he says, you can't push anything into its next state. You have to give it room to move. Some electronics push you. EM tower creates space for you to move.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, it's certainly one of the things I like the most is that the Cosmic Tower is simply driven by natural materials and sacred geometry, and that's what drives it. And
Yeah.
so no electricity. We did the same thing in our structured water business, never involved with the electricity. And I think that's a really valuable choice. So let's dive into the business model. So we got some of the qualitative differences of the technology, but
Yeah.
It seems like people, I've encountered something in the marketplace that's hard for me to be with. You know, the most expensive cosmic tower with a range of 500, well, 800 kilometers that's always turned on, costs $16,500. And
Yeah.
we have people making deposits on EE systems that are larger than that. And then finding out when they learn about the cosmic tower that they want to change course and they can't get their deposit back. And so, what have you learned about those business policies that they've got to support their business?
Well, I know for a fact, I know there have been actually some do your own research online, you'll find some instances of where people have tried to get their deposit back and have been unsuccessful. And it's, to me, not a good business practice because they're focused on the money, not the customer. And to me, that resonates very harshly with my heart. Because as I've learned through the years, if you take care of your customer, you'll never want for another customer because they'll keep bringing them to you. And the thing with EE systems is that they've now made it sort of a sole funnel to it through a gentleman, Jason Sakura, who does some amazing work and some amazing sharing of insights and technologies and stuff. But he's now the funnel point, I think, for sales, from what I understand. And that's not necessarily bad, but he's divided because he has his own social media business and then he's trying to do this. And so I think it's a challenge to do both effectively. And that's why I like the focus of the people on the tower. That's what we do, is the tower. I know people have to invest some extra money when they get an install. Now I know of a person that set up a system, been there for 2 years now, maybe 3 years, and they're actually putting in another system within 3 miles or 5 miles of them. That's a bigger system. And I'm just going, why would you create a competitor for one of your existing clients within literally walking distance almost? It just didn't seem like it was fair to the original owner that created the market in their location. But, that's my different approach of business. You want to get everybody to where they cover the country, not overlap each other. And so as the numbers have increased, I've seen people lowering their prices to compete. But I've seen some that are very successful because people are running it from the right place. It's not a business, it's to serve the public. And those that are doing it as a business are seeing some pushback from the universe where it's a little more tougher to get your revenue where you want it. Because there are people making very good money doing it every month, and there are people who aren't making as much as they need. And it's a huge investment.
Yeah, I heard from a system owner that the saturation issue is really something, and that she anticipated being able to forget about making a profit, simply get enough revenue to cover the monthly payments that she has to make to pay off the system. And
Yeah.
that, she on a month-to-month basis is under threat of having the system taken back. And it's not easy to grow that. And it seems like there might have been a time period where the people before the time got their businesses established and they got the cash flow to handle it. And the
Yeah.
people since then, like this person said, she'd been in communion with other people, and that seemed like after that time, people are not having success with covering the cost of that money to be invested.
Well, it can be a tough business. I mean, if it's an add-on to an existing business, it could be profitable, but back in my business world days, I was actually an advisor to startups. And I said, they said, what's your burn rate? Can you survive on it? And they go, well, I can make enough money to pay me. I went, well, how about paying the bills? Are you making enough money to pay the bills and you? How many people do you have to see a day? What are those numbers? And when you've got four centers all within 50 miles of each other, sometimes it can just be a price game or a location convenience. It's not that you have a unique offering. You're another store that sells sandwiches. you know, and your sandwich can't be any different because it's the same system. So
Yeah.
it's a little tough.
Yeah, all there is to compete on there is price. And then, of course, if you invest in a mid-range EE system and some comes in with a bigger one, then the customers that are in the same geographic area are all going to be attracted to the bigger one.
Well, here's something I noticed. There was a system that opened up. It was a 48 here in the DFW area. And when they first started advertising and at their grand opening, their rates were $60 an hour. Within 3 days, they were down to 40
Wow.
because they had 40 something seats in there. So they had a lot of seats to fill,
Yeah.
and I bet that was $500,000 at least, that system, because the other one's 25. No, it was probably $250,000.
Yeah.
They're in a big location, a former PetSmart. And so it's a big retail space as well.
Well, somebody really took something on there. Well, hopefully that additional capacity translates well. Maybe it'll someday be as inexpensive as a yoga class for people, and get more
Well, and
people.
I'm curious what and I understand there are ways to adjust the frequency of an EE system to different effects. I've not seen it personally, but I've been told by some of the owners that we can change its focus. And I've not really seen that in action, but I know that that's a possibility. And that might be where some people are getting their distinction as a owner. Our system's tuned this way, test our place, test this place, because where it's located matters. And one of the systems I looked at, I walked through the space, it's a big space, and I was walking through it, and I walk in with a compass sometimes, because in big retail spaces, there's usually underground electrical cables. And sure enough, as I walked, my needle's doing this, and then it goes here, and it goes there, then it comes back to here. Ooh, and this is right in the middle of the EE system field. I didn't think it would be ideal, but that's just me.
Gotcha. Are there any other things that you've learned about the EES business practices or anything else that you would share with somebody who's thinking about one of their systems?
I mean, I think if you've got a market and you've already got a customer base, I think you can be fairly successful. I do think remote is going to be a requirement for people at some point, because they're actually announcing now donation programs. So people who can't afford $60 an hour to go sit in an EE system, or $40 an hour to sit in an EE system, are being sponsored, because they're finding out that they've got a demographic, and it's a economically secure demographic, and the rest of the world can't see it. Where what I'm trying to do is offer remote to anybody that wants it, and find a price that works for them, because realistically the cost is minimal once the system is running to run a remote. And so we've set that up with a couple of other locations. From what I understand, they were doing well. So it's a good thing.
That's great. Well, I appreciate what you've developed with the remote, and that you're helping people get EE systems at a lower price point. And I want to wrap up by just telling people, if they're interested in an EE system and want to talk to you, that you're available. If they're interested in remote services, they're available. And if they're interested in a Cosmic Tower, you're available. And so we'll put your information below the video, so people can reach out and contact you. And
Yes.
give you the chance to make a difference with your knowledge in the world. So thanks a lot
Be
for
my honor. Be my honor.
being a part of this. All right, thanks, John.
Thank you, sir. Have a blessed day.